Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're going to continue reading with uh, Bhagavad Gita as it is. We are on chapter 15. We're going to begin text 7. Mamaivam jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, manasasthan indriyani, prakriti sthani karshate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So here we can see Krishna is saying, Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mama, my, Eva, certainly, Amsha, fragmental particle, Jiva Loke, in the world of conditional life. Jiva Bhuta, the conditioned living entity, Sanatana, eternal. We are the living entity, we are the soul. Right now we are inside the body. And Krishna is saying, all these souls, they are my eternal fragmental parts. So we are eternally fragments of Krishna. We can never become one with Krishna. Eternal means forever. Now, past, present, and future. So in this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part of the Supreme Lord eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life, and in his liberated state he becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatana. So, because someone may think, okay, right now I'm an individual soul, but after I get liberated, I'm going to become one with God. I'm going to merge into God's existence. But no, Krishna is saying, Sanatana. Krishna is saying we are eternally Krishna's fragmental parts. So we continue remaining fragmental parts even after liberation. We continue as individual souls even after liberation, after mukti, after moksha. We still exist as individual souls. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion and the living entities are the separated expansions. So God, He is unlimited. Because He is unlimited, He expands unlimitedly. So these expansions are of two kinds. One is personal expansions, personal, which are called Vishnu Tattva. He himself is expanding, that is Vishnu Tattva. So his expansions have the same power as him. Is the same person. There's no difference between his Vishnu Tattva expansions, such as Lord Rama, Lord Nrsimha, Lord Varaha. Is the same God. And Krishna, God, also expands as us, individual souls, individual living entities, and we are separated expansions. We are separated expansions. So although we are expansions of God, we are not God. We are Jiva Tattva. We are not Vishnu Tattva. We are Krishna's energy, God's energy. So we are same in quality. God is Satchidananda. We, individual soul, we are Satchidananda. But God is unlimited. But the individual soul is minute. And we are that individual soul. And we are eternally minute. Even after liberation, we continue to remain minute. We cannot become God. So by his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Rama, Nrsimhadev, Vishnu Murti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. So that is our position. We, the Jivas, our position is we are not God, but we are servants of God. We are individual soul, yes. We are part and parcel of God, yes. God is Satchidananda. We, the individual soul, we are Satchidananda. Our position is that we are God's servants. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of the Godhead are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of living entities have their identities. So we have our own identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities have also fragmental portions of His qualities, of which independence is one. So we are part of God. We are, as it says, Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, simultaneous, one, and difference. The soul, we are the soul. We are simultaneously one with God. One, how? We are same in quality. Quality is same. God is Satchidananda. We are Satchidananda. Quantity, completely different. Just as the salt in one drop of ocean water is very less, minute. But the salt in the complete ocean is so much, huge quantities. Similarly, that's our position, that we are different in our potency. God is unlimited, we are minute. So God has all the qualities unlimitedly. And because we are part and parcel of Him, we have His qualities minutely, tiny. And one of the quality is independence. We have this quality because God is supremely independent. So we are minutely independent. Every living entity, as an individual soul, has its personal individuality and a minute form of independence. So each of us souls, we are all individuals. And we will continue to remain individuals even after liberation. The soul is eternal, so the soul continues to remain individual even after liberation. Real life begins after liberation. That's the big liberation is not the end. Many people think that liberation is the end, but no, liberation is the beginning of our real life as individual souls. And then in liberation, there are activities. The soul has eternal activity, sanatana dharma. So the soul engages in the sanatana dharma, which is devotional service. So we have God's qualities minutely, out of which one of the qualities is independence. And now what happens is by misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. So because we have this independence, when we choose correctly, we get liberation. We are liberated, always. But when we misuse our independence, then we are put in this material world and we get a material body. In liberation, we are in our spiritual body. But when we choose to misuse our independence, we get this material body. So, what is this free will? What is the choice that we have? That we choose Krishna or we choose the material world? We choose to be with Krishna, or we choose to be away from Krishna. That we choose to enjoy in relation to Krishna, or we choose that we want to imitate Krishna and to become Krishna, then we are put in this material world. So that is the choice. And based on our choice, we are either in the spiritual world or we are either in the material world. In his liberated state, he's freed from his material condition and he's under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he's dominated by the material modes of nature and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So when the soul is liberated, what is he doing? He is engaging in devotional service to God. That is the eternal activity of the soul. It's not that the soul is inactive. Real activity is with the soul. It's the body. It's always dead. Dead body can never move. So what's the difference between dead body and living body? The soul was there. Because the soul is there, the body is moving. So activity is with the soul, not with the body. And once the soul leaves the body can't move anymore. So the soul is always active. So the soul is eternally active. Even after the soul is liberated, the soul is active. And what is this action? What is he doing? What is the activity? Devotional service. Loving devotional service. Pure devotional service. Bhakti. The soul is doing bhakti when he is liberated. And what happens in this material world when we are conditioned? Then we are in the material body and we are controlled by the three modes of nature. So we say, no, we don't want to serve God. But what happens? We serve material nature. We serve the modes. So the choice is ours. We want to serve Krishna directly or we want to serve the material modes. Then if we analyze, who do these material modes belong to? Material energy. Who does material energy belong to? Krishna. Devi Esha Gunamai, Krishna says. Mama Maya Duratya. So this material energy belongs to Krishna. The modes also belong to Krishna. They are made by Krishna. So the soul in the material world is indirectly serving Krishna. So we can see that we can actually, no way can we stop serving Krishna. Now the choice is we serve directly or indirectly. Serve in loving relationship or then we are serving the material modes. So when we say service, it may come to our mind, what do you mean service? Service means not good, it's not a nice condition. But we analyze our activities. What are we doing? We are constantly serving. We serve our loved ones because we love them. We do things for our parents, our children, our spouse, our friends, our community, our society. Why? Because we love. So service is a symptom of love. And this perfection is love for God. So the perfection of service is serving God. Because each of us have a loving relationship with God. And being situated in that relationship with God is perfection. That is liberation. That is real liberation. So as a result, now in the modes of nature, conditioned soul forgets this loving relationship with God. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. So this is what we are doing, struggling hard to be here in this material world. Karshati. The living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the great controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestation. So then we may think that only the human beings are maybe parts and parcel of Krishna, of God, but no. Even the cats and dogs are part and parcel of God. Then what to speak about the demigods? Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. What about them? They are also parts and parcels of God, of Krishna. And what about Lord Vishnu? Lord Vishnu is also coming from Krishna. So they're all parts and parcel of God, all part and parcel of Krishna. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. It's not that the soul stays for some time and then after liberation the soul does not exist. No, the soul is eternal. Soul continues to exist even after liberation. So the soul, which is in the body of cat and dog, also is part and parcel of Krishna. The soul, which is in the body of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, is also part and parcel of Krishna. Lord Vishnu, he's Krishna's personal expansion. He's Vishnu Tattva. So we can see that that's why Krishna is called Sarva Karana Karanam. Cause, he's the cause of all causes. He's called the Adi Purusham, Adi Purush. Govindam Adi Purusham, Tam Aham Vachami. Lord Brahma says, you are the original seed-giving father. He's saying to Krishna. So the word Karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He's bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence. So we think we are very free. I can do whatever I want to do. Nobody can tell me anything. I have this freedom. But we are not able to understand that we are the soul. We shouldn't be inside this material body. We should be having our own spiritual body. So right now, we are bound. We are bound by the false ego and the mind. The mind, when the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower species of life. So currently we are reading in Bhagavatam, in the section of Bhagavatam, where Narad Muni is explaining to Prachina Barishat that how with the mind, all the desires are situated in the mind, and how with the mind we are creating further bodies for ourselves in this material world. Because of so many desires, the material desires we are getting, based on that, we are creating so many of the bodies for our own self. So many births we will have to take in this material world due to this varieties of desire that we have. And we also read in that same section we are reading that what's the situation of the mind? The body acts. The function of the mind is thinking, feeling, and willing. And what is the situation of the body? That is translated into our action. So when the mind is in the mode of goodness, the activities are good. Mind is in the mode of passion, activities are troublesome. Passion means too many desires. There's a lot of desires, so there's a lot of endeavor, a lot of activity. That's why it's said troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, means really don't know what to do, when to do, what is to be done, what is not to be done. Then the living entity goes in the lower species, means could be like hellish bodies or animal bodies. Mind in the mode of goodness means one has Brahmanical qualities. Generally good, the good qualities. So it is clear, however, in this verse that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and the senses. And when he is liberated, this material covering perishes. But his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. So we are the soul, individual soul. Right now, we are covered by the subtle body, which is of mind, intelligence, and false ego, and the gross body, this that we can see, the bones and the flesh, So this is made of earth, water, air, fire, ether. And then we have these senses. So we are conditioned souls, so we have this gross body and subtle body. What about liberation? Liberation means giving up both these coverings, the subtle body and the gross body. And our spiritual body manifests. Every soul has an individual spiritual body. Every soul has that. Just now, as every soul is having its own material body, when we give up this body, we give up the material body, we give up the subtle body, means when we get liberated, then we can have our own spiritual body. So individuality is eternal for the soul. It's not that after liberation the soul does not exist or become God. No, the soul is eternally individual. Difference is now he has material body. After liberation, the soul has spiritual body. Now the soul is thinking he's the body, so he has material activities. At the liberation, the soul understands his position, that I have loving relationship to God, so he engages in that loving relationship. Service to God. Service to God begins by hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, from the devotees. Who are we hearing from? We should hear from the devotees, those who are certified with this knowledge, those who have the real knowledge. We cannot think that, okay, I'm going to open the internet and whatever I hear on the internet is true. Like, for example, we want to become a doctor. And we say, well, I'm going to open the internet and I'm going to learn from the internet to be a doctor. And um, that's how I will become. Who's going to come? Who's going to come to us for their treatment? No one. Until unless we find a proper university, we find a proper teacher, we take the proper classes, we enroll ourselves. Sure, it could be on the internet, but we have to do this proper education system. Find the university which is offering this services, learn with the teachers, then train under proper doctor. Similarly, spiritual knowledge is like that. Who are we hearing the spiritual knowledge from? We should hear it from in the parampara, in the disciplic succession. Asking, oh, where did you hear from? Who's your guru? Guru's guru, guru's guru, like that. And the original guru, original speaker has to be Krishna. So, hearing and then chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So devotional service begins by hearing and chanting. These two are very, very relevant to us. So the following information is there in the Madhya Dinayana Shruti. Sava Esha Brahmanishta Idam Shariram Martyam Srijya Brahmabhishampadya Brahmana Pashyati Brahmana Shranoti Brahman Nevedam Sarvam Anubhavati. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up his material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body, and in his spiritual body he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality as he is. So we can see we have this information here in this Shruti, Madhya Nindayana Shruti, that when the soul, we are the soul, when we are liberated, when any soul gives up this material world, means no need anymore for material the gross body, no subtle body. When the soul enters the spiritual world, just as there is the material world, there is a spiritual world. And in the spiritual world, the soul gets back his spiritual body. In the spiritual world, the soul lives in the spiritual body. And in the spiritual body, he can see God face to face. He can hear and speak to God face to face. And he can understand God as he is. So this is liberation, when the soul can get back his spiritual body and he can speak to God, see God face to face. This is real liberation. This is real mukti. So from Smriti also it is understood, Vasanti Yatra Purusha Sarve Vaikuntha Murtaya. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godheads. And as far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entities and the expansions of Vishnumurti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just as God is spiritual, God has a spiritual body. When the soul gets liberated, the soul also gets a spiritual body by the mercy of God. The soul continues to remain an individual and he gets his own spiritual body. God has his own spiritual body. And the soul, when he's liberated, he gets his own spiritual body. The words Mamai Vamsa, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter, which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. So Krishna is saying, Mama Vamsa Jiva Loke, fragmental parts and parcel. Now we are always thinking in terms of matter, material. Or we are thinking you take a piece of paper and you cut the paper, become so many parts, and then you join it again. So then it will become all one. No, we are not matter, we are not paper. We are not a drop of water that you take out a drop of water. So it's separate, but you put the drop of water back in the ocean, so it becomes one. No, we are not water. We are spirit souls. We are spiritual. Water is material. Water is a material element. So, and we heard in second chapter, Krishna says that the soul cannot be cut to pieces. We are eternal. The conception is not applicable here because the word Sanskrit word Sanatan, eternal, is used. Sanatana, we are Sanatana, eternal. We were always existing, we are existing now, we will continue to exist. Only the body changes, but the soul continues to exist. The soul sometimes has a material body, sometimes he has a spiritual body, but the soul exists eternally. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. Dehinosmin yatha dehe. So inside all the bodies that we see, there is a soul. The Jivatma is there. And this Jivatma, Krishna is saying, Mamayvamsa Jiva Loke. Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, saying Sanatana. That we are fragmental parts and parcels of Krishna. The soul is a fragmental part of God. It's not cut, or it's not that a machine part is broken. No, we eternally exist as individuals, as part of God. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. So in the conditioned world, what happens? That we, fragmental portion, the fragmental portion, the soul, is inside the material body. But at liberation, right now in material life, the conditioned soul, the fragmental part, is inside a material body. But at liberation, what happens? This individual soul, this fragmental part of God, when it's liberated, it gets its original spiritual body. Where? In the spiritual sky. Where? In a spiritual planet. And what does he do? Enjoys association with God. This is really liberation. When the soul can get back its own spiritual body. Every soul has its own spiritual body, just as now every soul is having its own material body. So at liberation, the soul will get back its own spiritual body in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there are many spiritual planets. Just like here in the material sky, there are so many material planets, so many. And there are living entities in all these planets. Similarly, in the spiritual world, spiritual sky, so many spiritual planets are there. And all the liberated souls live there. All the souls that have mukti, they live there. And they have their own spiritual bodies. And they can see God face to face. They're enjoying association with the Supreme Lord, with God. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as the parts and parcels of gold are also gold. So the soul is fragmental part of God. So as God is Satchidananda, the soul, because he's fragmental part of God, is also Satchidananda. Just as a part of gold is also gold, and all the gold in a gold mine is also gold. There's a gold ring, there's a gold necklace, there's a gold bracelet. All this is gold. Doesn't matter the shape, it's all gold. So we, the living entities, the souls, are part and parcel of God. So God is spiritual. That's why we are spiritual. The souls, we are spirit souls. God has a spiritual body. We, the souls, also have our own spiritual body. And liberation means to revive this spiritual body and associate with God face to face. Speak to God face to face. That is liberation. Any questions or comments?
Hello.
Okay, going on then. Shariram yad avapnoti yad chapi utkramatishvara grihitvaitani samyati vayurgadhan ivashayan. Does anyone want to read?
Okay, I can read.
Okay.
Translation. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Purport. Here, the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. Minute independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends upon him. At the time of the death, the consciousness he has created will carry him on to the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or a dog, he is sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he is fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karsati of struggle for existence.
So here it's, you see how we can see all the scriptures, they speak the same thing. Bhagavatam, we are currently reading this section. Then how the soul is in one body, how he's creating his another body with his mind, the subtle body, all the desires that are there in the mind. Bhagavad Gita is saying the same thing. So the scriptures, they always speak the same thing. There is no contradiction. Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, they're teaching us the same. So what happens is, how we are called that if we like, we can change body to a higher grade, and if we like, we can move to a minute class, lower class. Why? Because we have independence. So it's our choice. Our choice. Well, how? Because our consciousness. What is our consciousness? At the time of death, that will give us either a body of a demigod or a body of an animal, depends what's our consciousness. And if one is Krishna conscious, then of course he can go to the spiritual world, can go to Golok Vrindavan, get his spiritual body. So our consciousness, our desires, the state of our thoughts, our consciousness, that is what is creating our future body. So the choice is ours. So when we say destiny, it's in our hand, based on the choices we make. What is our consciousness? What is our desires? As Prabhupada is saying, if we have a consciousness of a cat or a dog, then the next life we'll get the body of a cat or a dog. If our consciousness is in the mode of goodness, godly qualities, then we can get the body of a demigod, go to the heavenly planet, live there and enjoy there for a long time. But of course, again, have to come to the earth. After the pious karma is finished, again come to the earth. Again, depending on what the consciousness is. Again, if our consciousness is uh, a lower consciousness, then we go in the bodies of animals. Or if our consciousness is higher, we go in the consciousness of demigods. So consciousness is important. And one who is Krishna conscious, he goes to the spiritual world. He can go to the spiritual world, have his spiritual body. So consciousness, that's what we need to do. We need to clean our consciousness. Right now, we are actually souls, part and parcel of God. But inside, in this material atmosphere, we are thinking we are the body. Our consciousness has become covered. We simply have to clean this consciousness. And the cleansing process is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The more we can chant the Hare Krishna mantra, the more we can clean our consciousness. The more we are hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, the more we can clean our consciousness. You know, like a gold ring is always going to be a gold ring, even if it falls in all the dirt and muck, and it gets covered by dirt and muck. But it doesn't mean the gold ring has become the dirt. No, we just clean up the dirt, wash it with water nicely, and the gold ring will shine. So we are souls, spirit souls. Right now, our consciousness is covered because of association with material world. We simply have to purify our consciousness. And how do we do that? We hear and we chant, and the consciousness will be purified. So some say, oh, once the body is finished, everything is finished. No, we are souls, we are eternal. And we are going from one body to another, one body to another, based on our consciousness, based on our activities. So our desire and our karma, based on that, we are creating our next bodies. So that's how it is said that the subtle body creates our next gross body. Subtle body is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So the consciousness, the desires of the subtle body, that is what is creating our next gross body. So as we say, if we have consciousness of in the mode of goodness, we can get the body of a demigod. If our consciousness is like animals, we'll get animal body in the next life. But if we become Krishna conscious, then we can go to the spiritual world. We can go and associate with Krishna. So we should try to get that because that's our original position. We can get our spiritual body if we revive our Krishna consciousness, we get our spiritual consciousness, we can get a spiritual body. And so for that, we need to constantly hear and chant, regularly hearing and chanting. Hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shrotram Chakshu Sparshanam Cha
Shrutam kashachu prashanam cha.
Rasanam Gra what's that? Gharanam Evacha
Rasanam gharanam evacha.
Adhisthaya Manaschayam
Adhisthaya manaschayam.
Vishayan Upasevate.
Visaya upasevate. Translation: the living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport: in other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of a cat and dogs, in his next life he gets a cat or a dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure, like water. But if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure. For the spirit, soul is pure. But consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of many other forms. For there are uh, 8
8,400,000.
8,400,000 species.
So based on our consciousness, we are creating our next body. If our consciousness is like of a cat or a dog, we will get our next body as a cat or a dog to enjoy in that way. If our consciousness is that of in the mode of goodness, we will get next body as a demigod to enjoy in the heavenly planets. But what's the real consciousness? Originally, consciousness is pure, we are hearing. Like water is pure. But if we add something to the water, then color changes. So, spirit soul, always, the original consciousness is pure, but it changes. When we come to the material world, based on these modes of nature, Rajogun, Tamagun, Sattvagun, then the consciousness changes in our association with these modes. So, what is the real consciousness? Krishna consciousness. That is the real consciousness of every spirit soul, God conscious, Krishna conscious, understanding that I am part and parcel of Krishna. And how can I please Krishna? Because I have a loving relationship with Krishna. So every soul has this original consciousness. Right now, this original consciousness is just covered by our material desires. We have gotten covered. Our original consciousness is covered by a lot of this material desires which are stored in the mind. And based on these desires and activities that we do, based on our desires and karma, we get a next body to enjoy in the way that to fulfill our desire, whatever it may be. That's why there are 8,400,000 species of life: cats, dogs, demigods, human beings. It depends on what is the consciousness. So, original consciousness of the soul is Krishna consciousness. And that's the reason the scriptures are all advising us revive your original Krishna consciousness, because that we cannot do when we are in the body of an animal, but we can do when we are in the human body. We can revive our original consciousness, our Krishna consciousness. As we just said, we can revive it by chanting. Chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. By hearing. The first result of chanting Krishna, Lord Chaitanya says in a Shikshastakam, Cheto Darpana Marjana. The first thing that happens when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, Cheto Darpana Marjana, that our consciousness gets purified. All the dust that is there on the mirror of the mind, that gets clean. So our material consciousness gets purified and our Krishna consciousness can be manifest. That's the first result of chanting Hare Krishna mantra. That's the dharma for this Kali Yuga dharma, Harinam Sankirtan. The Vedas are telling us. And so that's why we are again and again um, being told, take up this chanting of Hare Krishna mantra to clean our consciousness, and so that we can go to the spiritual world in our own spiritual bodies, and over there see Krishna face to face, see God face to face, talk to God, have a loving association with God, have a loving relationship with God. So let's stop here for today, since time is almost up, and we can continue reading tomorrow. And thank you so much for listening and enjoying it. Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.